Well, hi again everybody, welcome to my latest video. Well, this is going to be another one in my network brief series, and I'm going to show you how to set up remote access to computers that you may have in your own personal little home or office network. So I'll go through some of the prerequisites for it, and then I'll show you how to set it up using some virtual machines that I have created, and then finally I'll show you how, from my main computer workstation here, how I can access this PC, which we built in a previous video, remotely and manage it remotely. So if you get something out of this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Let's get started. So as you can see on the screen here, I have two virtual machines set up. The one that's listed as D, 1064D, that virtual machine is the one that's going to try to remotely access the second virtual image, just as if they were two separate computers. Should be no difference here at all. Well, I'll show you one difference later, but generally it's not a difference. So most of the changes, actually all of the real changes, are going to occur on the target, which is what I'm calling this one here, the one that is Win 1064E. That is our target system. So in order for us to do that, we have to change a configuration on this system. But before I do that, let me cover some prerequisites that we have to be aware of. First of all, the first prerequisite is that this will only work with a Windows Professional or Enterprise version of Windows. Now, other releases of Windows will work, for example, Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows XP even. However, the menus that you need to use there are going to be totally different from what I'm showing you here today, so just be aware of that. Secondly, the steps shown assume that you have an isolated home or office network, that it's not something that is open directly to the public internet. You need to have firewall between your network and the public internet. You need to be using DHCP that automatically assigns workstation IP addresses, or your pre-assigned, manually assigned IP addresses are still within the range that a DHCP would assign it. And the way you determine that is by what these IP ranges happen to be. There's a group of 3 different ranges that are called non-routable ranges. I have them listed here. This is just well-known information about the internet as a whole. So as long as you have an address range like that, this should work just fine. Now, what I'm showing here today also, I'm using Windows 10 build 2004, which represents 2020 month 04 was when that build was released by Microsoft. But I'm not going to cover those options that are earlier than 1709 because the menus do change. Now, to check what build you have, you go to Windows, Settings, then Update and Security. Let me go there now and show you what I mean. I'll pick one of these images. So we go to Windows, Settings, Update and Security. And there is a option that's here under Related Link, and it says OS Build Info. You click on that and it shows you what build you have. I have 2004. It was installed on not too long ago, July 20th, 2020. And then finally, you need to make sure all the security updates are set up. And I would do it on both this target and the one that's going to be the remote controller, or the one that's the source as I refer to it. Now we pick updates and security once again, but this time we click on this to check if there are any updates. And I'll do the same thing on the other one too, just make sure we have no updates pending on either one of these. Just remember, it's like having 2 different computers here, right? Check for updates. Because you don't want a security update to get in the way of you trying to do this. They're both up to date. Close this. Okay, now let me go through the configuration that we have to do. Now, you must be logged on as administrator. If you're not as administrator, most of these functions will not work for you. So both of these are currently set up as logged on as administrator. If I look here at who's logged in, it's David under admin, and it's that way for both of them. But I do have other accounts there. If we go into one of them and take a look, you'll see they both have the David account, and I think they both have the test account. These are accounts that I created. So then we have to go and make sure that we have the computer name of the target properly set. This is where it's important. The source is not so important for this, but the target is. So in order to verify that you understand what the target's computer name is, we go to the control panel and we pick System. We see the name right here. It is Win-E, which matches the name on the image that I created. So I tend to always make them match when I create a new image. So we're good with that. We know what it is too. It's Win-E. Remember that with an uppercase W and uppercase E. Now, if we had to change what this name was from Windows E that I currently have to something else, maybe that was, I forgot to change it, for example, after making the clone, you have to click on this change settings here. Now this first one is just a description. It's not as important, but I always change that as well. So if I were going to change it to something else, this is what I would change. But what's really important is this one right here, where it says to rename this computer or change its domain or work group. Well, we're only interested in the name of the computer, not these other things. We still have to click here. And this is where we actually would change the name. And when we're done, it'll tell us to hit OK. It'll warn us that we have to reboot it for that name to take effect. So you'd actually have to reboot the entire computer. In this case, reboot the image. No need for me to do that because it has the right name on it, but I did want to describe that. That's how you would change it. Now we have to go to the Windows settings for the next step. So in here, this little flower, settings, and then we want to go to also system. But in here, we want to come in this left-hand menu choice, and one of them down here is called the remote desktop. Right now it's off. So if I tried to remote to this computer, it would not answer at all. The network would not find it because it has, for purposes of that service. It would find it for other reasons, but not for that service, because it does have a unique name, right? But it would not answer to a remote connect. So what we have to do here is turn it on. It's going to warn you. Do you want to confirm that you're enabling that? And the reason they do that, it's a security risk. That's why you want an isolated network. Now, you want to make sure both of these boxes are checked. Unfortunately, because it's an image and not a real computer, this first one checks the hardware capability. And in the hardware capabilities of a Windows image under, the virtual environment, it does not have the capability of having the machine go to sleep. So if I click on show settings, you'll see what I mean by that. We can change how long it takes for the monitor to turn off. Basically, the screen will go blank the way it's set by default right now after 10 minutes, but it does not give you an option to set sleep. In a regular computer, you want to make sure that it can never sleep in order for the remote access to work properly and effectively. But just keep that in mind, that is an issue. So that turns it on, but we're not done. It is now enabled. Now we want to go into this advanced setting. In the advanced settings, what do we get? Well, this is an important option, and we've got it's on by default, and we got to turn this off for this to work. Require computers to use network level authentication. That's meant for an enterprise environment, like most people's jobs that have like a domain controller on it, or if you happen to have one in your home. So it would have to be enabled in the actual domain controller. Most people will never have that, but they may have a home network, the way I have it before I had my own server in it. You have to turn this off. It again allows you, because now you're increasing the risk by not doing that. The actual server protects you if it's the front man for those connections. So I'm going to say proceed anyway. So that takes care of the advanced setting. The only other thing we have to do is a check. For example, how to connect to this PC. Well, right now, what is its current name? So it's going to connect over a Windows network, and it's going to have to refer to this computer as Win-E. Well, that's what we know this computer is set to. There are other ways to connect, more advanced ones that I'm not going to go into. So you could just leave this alone. Just double check to make sure it matches the name you expect it to match. But this is important. You want to select what users can remote in. Now, by default, the primary administrative account on this system, which happens to be David under admin, it even tells you David under admin already has access. So if I'm coming and trying to log into this computer, the only one that's I'm allowed to log in remotely as is David under admin. You'll see when I do the other computer image how that plays. But let's say I have a David account on this computer too. I'm going to add it. So I type in my David here. You should always do the check names, because then it'll validate that that's a valid name, that you didn't misspell it. That'll check this guy's account database to see if it's present, and it found it. On Win-E, there is a David. If you put a name in there that it can't find, it'll go through a whole other set of menus to try to come up with an alternate way of identifying that person. I'm not going to show that here because it's quite confusing. So just, if this doesn't check, back out of it and make sure you check what accounts you actually can use on this computer. When we are done, we say okay. We have David in here, so now David on the admin and David can both access this computer, an image in this case, remotely. You say okay to that, and now we're completely done. I can close this up, and now I can go to the one that's the source. And in here, the only thing I have to do is run the actual service. I don't have to do anything in particular. Now, there's a lot of different ways to find this, just like there's a lot of different ways to find some of the stuff I showed you up to this point. But if in doubt, you can come down to the search area here, and I'm interested on, starts with remote, I know that, and it pops up right away before I finish the word remote desktop connection. I would recommend right-click on it and pin it to your start. That way you'll always have it there for you. If you come down here to start now, remote desktop is there. And you could also take this and basically drag it onto your desktop too if you're using it that frequently. So all we have to do now is click on this. It's already set up to go to Win-E. Now it just so happens because I used the same image to do this before, it shows that. But in many cases, this would not be present. It would look like this. So now it's asking us information on what computer we want to remote into. So let me go ahead and type in the computer. Remember what that one was? Oh, it already found it. Probably because I had used it before, that name. Do I want to go in as David Admin? No, I don't. So I'm going to click on Show Option. And in here, I can pick a different account. I want to go in as David. Now, that David doesn't have to exist on this computer. It happens too, but it doesn't have to exist here. That's only, this name here is what would exist on this second computer's image. So once I've done that, I say, okay, connect. I could save it too, but I'm going to skip that step. It's now asking me for David's password on that computer. Let me type that in. And then don't click remember me. That's a real security one, because then it saves a copy of credentials on the computer itself. So I avoid doing that at all costs. Click OK. It gives you a warning to say that, hey, it's not going through authentication server. Somewhat of a risky thing. And if you were going in the real internet, that would be a real risk. But here in an isolated network, it is not. And most home networks are isolated networks. Am I sure? Yes. It's now connected to the remote system. It says another user is signed in. If I continue, it will log that user out. This is an important thing to remember. So if you have somebody working on another computer in your home and you decide to try it, you can't covertly do this. Not with this tool. There are other tools you can buy that can do that. This one that comes default in Windows is not a covert way of getting in. Click yes here. What do they get? Do you want to allow this action? Click OK to disconnect your session immediately, or click cancel to stay connected. No action will disconnect your session in 30 seconds. So if they do nothing, let's say they were not sitting there, they would be logged out. But I'll assume I'm sitting there and I'm okay with you logging in, so I'll say OK. Now it has logged me out, and this one is logging in. So now we're logged into that computer, into the David account. And notice I'm actually in a window here. So keep that in mind as you do this. You may have to scroll down to get to the bottom of the window, or you could scroll left or right, or you could just go full screen as well. If you go full screen on it, then there's no problem at all. You'll be able to see everything on your screen. But it's reduced the size of it, but kept the resolution. And I can do whatever I want over here. I could even go ahead and I'll skip any, further details. I'm just going to log out. Well, first of all, how do you get out of it? Want to get out of that session? Well, you can just close this window and it will end the remote session. An alternate to that, which is what I'm going to do to show you that you do have some power, I'm going to go and do a power shutdown on that computer. Shut down anyway, fine. Watch what happens. The image has shut down, because that's what we did. So now let me go ahead and try this to another computer standing behind me, which you can probably still see on the video here. It is up and running, has no mouse, no keyboard, no monitor. I'm going to remote into it. So let me go ahead and click on the remote connection again. I don't want Win-E this time. I want an extra. I got to give it a username. So it's going to, if I leave that alone where it says none specified, that means I've never logged in from this image to that computer. Let me do a connect. It's going to ask me both the username and password this time. So let me go David under admin and the password. Okay. Same warning. Just click yes this time. And we have now we're going into the other computer. Now, nobody's currently logged on over there, so we don't get that warning. So now we are in on that computer. Then extra computer that's sitting behind me right over here. If you look at my little picture in the corner there, the upper right hand corner. And I can do whatever I want to that one now. That one has full network connectivity. I can go ahead and run it. Let me go ahead and run something just to show you what it does. If I click on, let me get out of this stuff here. If I run Microsoft Edge, let me go ahead and go to the internet and type in YouTube. I'll type in my channel here. There I am. I'll click on that. I'll stop this. It works fine. You even hear the sound that's occurring on this computer through the remote session. Well, that's all I wanted to show. Well, it worked out. Hopefully you found this video interesting and you got something out of it. And maybe if you have multiple computers in your home network, it's something you might want to try to do. Certainly makes life easier. Get around rather than have to get up and sit at a different workstation, or in some cases, just like the one I have back here, doesn't have a monitor or keyboards on it. And I can still remotely manage it without any problem. Once again, if you got something out of this video and you found useful in any way, I would appreciate your considering subscribing to my channel. My head will pop up here in a moment. Click on it, follow along and subscribe. There is no charge for subscribing, believe me. And you'll be able to see my future videos. At least you'll have some notice of it when you go into YouTube. Well, for now, take care, and I do thank you for watching. Bye.